And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Stripe Dev Chats. My name is Cecil Phillip, and today I'm really excited because I have one of my really good friends, Sarah, here, who's going to be talking to us about one of the things that she's really interested in and working on, and that's how we can monitor applications using Sentry. So I've never used Sentry before. Definitely looking forward to learning a little bit more about it. Hopefully you are too. And so if you have any questions for Sarah, make sure you go ahead and drop them inside of the chat, and I'll try my best to make sure that we get a chance to answer them as we go on. But Sarah, how are you doing, man? Why don't we start with like a little bit of introduction?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Hey, Lazar. Lazar's on my team. He's in the chat right now.
Nice.
Um, yeah, so you may have noticed I'm not Shanna. Shanna's also on my team, but she's not feeling well today, so I'm stepping in. I'm doing pretty good. It's been a little jarring. I just got back from a Disneyland trip for my daughter's fifth birthday, and
Ooh.
not that, this isn't comparable to Disneyland, but it is a little hard to not
I
be like
mean,
staring at this map right here, being like, "Oh, am I back?"
like I remember that. I was just there the other day. It's funny. Um, this is not Disneyland, but I'm gonna try to make it just as exciting for you. I'm gonna try my best.
Definitely.
We're gonna try to work it out. Um, Funny enough, so for folks that don't know, I'm in Florida. So I have been to Disney Worlds, but never been to Disneyland. And I know there's a difference. I don't know what the differences are, but hopefully you had like an amazing time when you were over there with your daughter.
Yes. I have been to Disneyland, I don't know, maybe 100 times. I've never been to Disney World. I've actually been to Disneyland Paris, never been to
Oh,
Disney World.
yeah.
So I hear Disney World is much bigger. Like you could spend weeks there and not see everything. Disneyland and California Adventure, much smaller. You can definitely do it in like a day or two. Um, but it is my like home. I'm from Southern California, even though I live in Washington now. So
I feel
uh,
you.
it's definitely like my happy place.
Nice. And so we met before because we used to be coworkers in a previous life,
Yes,
and but now you're working at Sentry,
I
and I've
am.
heard about Sentry, but haven't been completely sure about like everything they do. So could you give us like a
Yeah,
super quick elevator pitch? Like what is Sentry? Like what space do they occupy? What are some
for
of the
sure.
services that you guys offer?
Definitely. Yeah. And we'll chat a little bit about them. I want to show you a couple of like demos and stuff. But so Sentry is application monitoring. And we really started with errors. And so if we think
Mhm.
about application monitoring in the space of errors, basically when your app is up and running and users are using it. Oh, there goes my green screen.
Uh-oh.
Lord, that's fine. You can just see my background now. Totally fine. Definitely scared the dogs, but
That's
let me
funny.
just pick this up super quick so the dogs don't.
Sure,
Yeah,
that's fine.
there goes the dogs. Okay. Um, so if you think about application monitoring in terms of errors, basically your app is up and running. Your users are using it, and users are hitting maybe like the same error. They get to the checkout page, and just something is erroring out. It would be very bad if you had to wait until there was like this big Twitter rant about all of the errors that were happening on your app. It would not be great. So ideally, you have some kind of software, Sentry, that is monitoring when users are hitting errors. And the benefit of a software like this, especially one like Sentry, where we are really focused on like a developer first approach to application monitoring, is that not only will we notify you in whatever ways you want to be notified, email, Slack, etc., that your users are facing these kinds of errors, but we will also, if you set up your Sentry with like your GitHub or GitLab or whatever source control you have, we'll also let you know where the likely source of that error is coming from. We also have other types of features like session replay, which we announced at our conference last year, which allows you to actually watch what your users were doing, like a video, not just kind of a log, what your users were doing when they encountered that error so that you can better reproduce the error and better fix it faster. So that's kind of like an example of application monitoring from the errors perspective. We also do monitoring from a performance perspective. So if your app is just slowing down on a particular page, on a particular pop-up window, whatever it is, then we'll notify you and we'll let you know that users are experiencing a slowdown, and where that slowdown likely is.
Okay. So I remember many years ago when I just started software development.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like monitoring errors and performance and things like that, that's not something like you usually tell new people about, or it's not something for me as a new person at the time that I knew a lot about, right? And so when I thought about handling exceptions, it was like a try catch, or whatever language you're using, like the thing that you capture your errors in. And then I'd write a log to a file somewhere.
Yep.
But then now that file is like localized, like that instance of my application. And now I have to like, remote desktop SSH into the machine to try and get the log and try and see what happened. And like, like it takes a while. And,
Yeah.
and then obviously if you have multiple instances of that app,
Yep.
you got multiple instances on that single machine or across multiple machines, that now becomes an exponentially harder problem to solve.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So what you're telling me is that Sentry could have saved my life like a couple of years ago from not having me write to like all those log files. But instead now it creates like this centralized mechanism that I could use to be like, hey, when bad things happen, send it to this place. And then now I'm guessing there's like querying and filtering and things like that I can not only see just what happened in the moment, but I can see what happened before and after it. So then I could get a better understanding about the context of what exactly happened with, that particular issue.
Exactly. Yeah. Application monitoring, you're right. Same with me. Like when I first started, it was not something that I was very aware of. Again, sorry, dog found something that he's chewing on that I don't want him to chew on.
Hope your dog is not chewing on your green screen. Is that what's happening right now?
It was a piece of my green screen. Yes. Okay. But yeah, so it was not something that I was aware of either. It was something that I definitely did the same, try catches, also just trying to find all of the errors that could possibly happen before releasing an update, which is just unrealistic. It's not possible to do that, right? And it's also not necessarily a good use of developers' time. Obviously, we want to have good code before we release. We want to do extensive testing and have, your test suite, which, by the way, quick plug, we also recently acquired CodeCov, because code coverage, aka making sure that you have tests that are covering all of the code that you have written, and making sure that like before you do any releases, you're monitoring what potential errors could happen, is important. But there's also kind of this this give and take, right? Like you don't want to spend weeks testing every possible scenario on any browser, any mobile app, on any version, with any other app running. Like it's just impossible to make sure that nothing will ever go wrong. And so something like Sentry can help with that. And the benefit of using an application monitoring tool, especially like Sentry, is that, again, we're really thinking about developers first. So first of all, integrating it into your app is like 5 lines of code, which makes my job in DevRel pretty easy. And then also, not only were we not necessarily taught when you're first learning how to write code, or when you get your first couple jobs, about monitoring and things like that, but it often falls into other orgs or other groups of engineers within a company, like DevOps. And so other application monitoring tools might focus on DevOps as their primary customer, whereas we're focusing a lot on developers, which means we're more focused on getting you to the line of code where there might have been an issue, rather than kind of, I don't want to compare. So like other things that you might focus on. We're really focused on kind of where did that error, where did that performance issue land in the line of code? If you have code owners set up, who should we tag? Who will have the most information to be able to resolve that and put out a fix as quickly as possible? Do we want to roll back to an earlier release while we resolve this? Is it a big enough issue that we want to do that, et cetera?
Okay. And I know you said earlier that we are going to take a look at some demos and see how it works for a little bit. But before we do that, I'm kind of curious, what types of applications exactly can I apply Sentry to? Like, is it only web apps? Is it mobile apps? Can I do my IoT backend things? Like, what can
Anything,
I put?
pretty much. Like
Anything.
literally pretty much anything. I mean, we have support for like I think it's over 100 by this point, languages and frameworks. I know right now we kind of like officially say over 99. And you know, if it's something like JavaScript, maybe we don't have the exact support for that JavaScript framework, but we have support for JavaScript, so you can still use it. Fun fact, Shana, during her interview, integrated Sentry with a Svelte app, and we didn't have support for Svelte at the time, and she still was able to integrate it with that, right? Yeah, mobile apps, IoT, I mean, pretty much anything. The other neat thing is that so Sentry started as this open source side project from one of our co-founders, David Kramer. He wanted to have better monitoring for his Django applications that he was working on. And so he just started this open source project, and it started getting enough people interested and enough people kind of talking about it that he decided to search for funding and start a company around it. We are still open source. You actually still can, first of all, take a look and at our open source repos, which I'll show you in a little bit. But you can still use Sentry completely open source and self-host it if you want. So yeah, any kind of app you want. If you're a smaller, one-person operation, because you're just kind of trying to, start something, or it's a side hobby, maybe you want to do the open source side. If you're a larger company, maybe you want the support of kind of, a hosted version of Sentry. But yeah, pretty much anything.
I really
Games.
like that too, because that means that essentially if I can run it anywhere. One of the things I like to do is, as I'm testing things out, like I usually like to spin them up in a container.
Yep.
One, because I don't have to like muck around with my file system. But then two, I get to like swap out and try out a lot of different pieces and see, hey, well, does this thing actually work well for me? And
exactly.
I think we all love the cloud, and the cloud is great. But one of the things you can't do in the cloud is run it on your machine. That's a very hard thing to do. And when you think about like automated testing scenarios and those types of things, it's hard to kind of like replicate that environment. So I really love services that I could, sure, there's a hosted version and I could use that and I could pay for it. But then there's also a version that I could use on my machine and disconnect from the internet and it still works.
Exactly.
So I really love that's an option as well.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want me to kind of show you around what it looks like, and then
I would
and then
love
share
for you
some
to
of
do
that?
that. Let's do it.
Cool. Let's do it.
Right.
So
I'm going to bring up your screen right now. All right. So your screen's up.
Perfect. And I'm going to share this link. You can share this link with everyone in the chat. This is our sandbox environment. So you don't even have to sign up. It will ask for your work email address, just so then that way we can, follow up with you if it's something that you do want to pursue. But in true kind of like developer first fashion, we of course, we're a for-profit company, so we're going to try to, make a sale, but we err so much on the side of like being there for developers. So putting in your email address isn't kind of introducing you to a million marketing emails. In fact, a lot of our engineers internally, and this is something that like the reason I joined Sentry, there's a few reasons. One is that it was open source, but another is this developer first mentality. And a lot of our developers internally even follow, sign up for our newsletters and sign up for our emails. So then that way, if it feels like we're being too markety or, like too aggressive, we give each other that feedback and make sure that it's actually useful for developers, the information we're sending. So, so you don't have to sign up. You just kind of put in your email address. And this is a sample project, and we have a couple of guided tours. And I wanted to go through this performance guided tour with you all today because, errors, I think it kind of makes sense. Okay, yes, there was an issue. Here's an issue in a React Native app. This was the error. And there is a guided tour for this as well, so you can kind of walk through it. You can see here we give you a ton of information, like what device they were on, what operating system that the user was running, which environment of that application, whether it was a development environment or production environment, et cetera. We give you the actual stack trace for where this error was thrown. So here on line 177 of this homescreen.tsx is where that error was thrown. We give you breadcrumbs of where the user kind of was going and kind of what happened up until that that error was thrown, which user this was, et cetera, et cetera. So you can kind of go through that, but I think we're all fairly familiar with an error was thrown, and let's kind of try to follow that. But I wanted to introduce you to one of these guided tours, which is our performance ones. So again, you can see here, trace slow loading pages back to their actual API calls, as well as any other related errors. So when we click on this guided tour, we're taken to this performance page, which actually does not look like it's working. I did just clear cookie, so hopefully I didn't mess something up now. Knowing me, I did. Why are you not? Let's change this to the last 7 days, see if that pops up. Okay, so we got some for the last 7 days. I don't know why I messed something up. It is likely me. Again, I kind of am filling in last minute for Shana, so apologies if I mess something up here. But you could see right now, so in the last 24 hours, maybe there wasn't a major performance issue that was happening, and so we can look back for the last 7 days for this particular project. We can see here some of these web vitals, and whether it was kind of the checkout or the list of products. We can dive deeper into each of these transactions, for example, the checkout transaction here, and we can see when there was kind of something that took a long duration, and we can kind of dig deeper into that. So I don't know why this particular guided tour isn't working. Let me try to click start again. Okay, I'm going to skip that one for now. Okay, here we go. This is what the guided tour should look like. I think I messed something up because I was testing this beforehand and kind of started it and then stopped it. So this one is on releases. And what I like about our sandbox is, first of all, you could see that even without a guided tour, you can just click around and you can start to explore the interface here. But with a guided tour, it'll actually kind of walk you through what's going on. So you can compare different releases. In this case, it's suggesting that we select the React Native project because maybe we wanted to compare that to some other release of the same application. So we're going to select our React Native one here. Okay. And then we can start to see very specific release-related trends, like release-specific trends, right? And so here we have 3 different releases of our React Native app, 3.0, 3.1, and 3.2. And we can see if there was an issue that was brand new, or if there was an issue that caused a regression, something like our crash rate or our user adoption or things like performance. So for example, here we can see that there was a regression in our crash-free releases. So we had more crashes in our 3.2 release than we did in our 3.1 release. We had 99.85% crash-free releases in the earlier version. And so this was a regression, and maybe we need to look into that. And you can also see there was only 32 crashes in the 3.1 and 845 in the 3.2. So there was definitely an issue. So we can kind of open this up and start to see more information about that particular issue.
What I think is interesting here is the fact that Sentry knows about my releases, because
yes,
and that's something I've never thought about until you showed it to me just now. Because in my head, it's always just been send the log, send the log, send the log, right?
Yes.
But would it being aware of the different versionings and stuff, then now I feel like you can get that deeper level of introspection, because you can say, okay, well this collection of issues and performance metrics are particularly tied to this release, and so now as you talk about rolling forward or rolling back or setting alerts and those types of things, you can be very specific to the context in which that's happening in.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I mean by like developer first, right? We think about developer first in our emails and our marketing and you know who we partner with for live streams. We also think about developer first in terms of our application, obviously, and our support for that. So yeah, as a developer, you don't want to have to go through a million logs and try to figure out, was it because of this release? Which release was this error related to? Was someone on an old version of my app or, you know, just a different version? We actually just kind of show that for you right here. So you can see this was the issue that caused all of those crashes from the 3.1 to 3.2 release. And we can kind of open this up. And again, just get all of that detailed information right here at our fingertips.
Nice. So now, and I know we spoke about this a little bit before, but just for clarity, so you're showing us right now a React Native application, which is a mobile application or like some client-based application, not a browser-based application. So this is JavaScript or JavaScript / TypeScript or whatever folks are decided to use.
Yep.
I'm guessing you have SDKs for like tons of other languages. So
we do.
if I'm, you know, if I'm using like a variety of programming languages in a particular solution, like I'm using some .NET and some JavaScript and some Go and some Java, whatever the case is, but it's all technically the same app, just different components of those. Can I send all those logs to like the same place and then version them together?
Exactly. So we've got all of these different projects here you can see, and on the releases, you can see right here, here's our 3.2, all of the potential issues that were with them. So they're all kind of grouped by that release. And we can come in here and view the Android one instead. So here is the like compared over time. Of course, we're gonna, you know, invite you to sign up, but you can continue to just kind of explore here. We can see that there's one new issue, which is this index out of bounds issue. There's one unhandled issue, which was this application not responding. When we click into these issues, this one is kind of that Android specific one. And I think this is an example of one where we can, I think, dive deeper, maybe not. I can't remember which one now is the one where we can kind of click in, but I'll show you that in just a moment. But yeah, you can see all of that information here. You can set up specific dashboards. Here's like a front end template. So if you have a front end application and you wanna set up a dashboard for that, I mentioned we have different types of alerts. So you can set them up and kind of qualify them so it doesn't just kind of attack you with a bunch of alerts that are unhelpful. You can assign them to specific teams, and then you can also assign them to do specific actions. Like I think this one is an example of right here. So when a certain number of errors is above 0 in 1 hour, send an email and then change the alert status to critical. You can also do Slack messages instead. I mean, it's kind of like anything that's useful for you. I mentioned we have kind of the performance stuff. We've got releases specific things. We've got issue specific things. You can also just look at it specific to a particular project, and also get user feedback, all from right in here.
Gotcha. We got one question coming in from YouTube from literally everything. And they're asking, can we see Sentry's analytics in the future, or will it only be for errors?
Do you mean, I'm thinking you mean analytics like for performance, which we do have. So this is kind of like here are transactions that are likely causing slowdowns within your application. So this one in particular, the payments controller for this Ruby application, checkout for this Python and checkout for that Python. We also have what's called a user misery score. So like how miserable are your users? And obviously you want to keep that low. This is your number of transaction events per minute. And then your failure rate. So these are a little bit more of that analytics data that I think you're referencing. We also have like general stats, not just specific error information. So you can see some of that in here. Again, that link that we shared in the chat will allow you to kind of go through and see if there's anything in particular that you're wanting to see. And when in doubt, we also have our documentation. So you asked like, how many different languages and frameworks and such. So these are just some of them. Here's the all 108 supported ones. And within here, there'll also be a lot of data in terms of like which stats or metrics or errors, performance, et cetera, we cover.
Gotcha. And literally everything responded with this follow-up.
Oh yeah,
really
Google
quick.
Analytics or App Center. So Google Analytics is more like number of clicks into your application and things like that, right? If I'm recalling right. So I'm not positive. I don't think we focus on that. You will have some, Molly, please stop. There will be some data in terms of like number of hits. So then that way, and we do track that. And I think it's not set up in this one because we focus more on like, yes, maybe there is a world where like you wake up and you open up Sentry and this is where you start your day. But honestly, again, we really want to integrate into the developer workflow and not be this like additional thing that you have to then go check. And so it's actually like funny story. One of my really good friends works on the Minecraft Education Edition team. And I was telling her back when I was interviewing for Sentry, hey, I'm interviewing for Sentry. She's like, oh, I've never heard of that. And I was like, oh, we do application monitoring. Anyways, a week or so later, she sends me a text and she goes, oh my gosh, we just hit an error in Minecraft and I went to go look into it and I realized I'm on Sentry right now. And she didn't even realize that they use Sentry, which is partially why we have a DevRel team now so that people can realize it. But kind of to answer your question, literally everything, part of it is that we're trying to be less intrusive into your developer workflow. So yes, there is that kind of data because we track that data so that we can know the rate, right? Like if 100 people are coming on and 5 people are hitting that error, then it's only hitting 5% of your users. So that data is available, but we want to give you that information in an actionable way and not just in this huge dashboard that you have to then go decipher and figure out. So I can't remember exactly where that information might be, but it's not necessarily a replacement to something like Google Analytics because we're focused more on that. You have some kind of problem or there's an opportunity to make some kind of improvement and where do you need to go right into your code to get that started?
Yeah. And that was a good question. So literally everything,
totally.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to follow up on something you just mentioned and about how you want to integrate into the developer workflow. When I think about like a lot of other APM tools or like different services that are in that space, there's usually like this architecture of I install like a package SDK NuGet Ruby gem thing, but then there's also like a local agent and then some stuff, and then I get to the service, right? And then now you have those agents that are like forwarding and buffering and forwarding messages on. Does the Sentry follow like a similar model, or does the Sentry just straight phone home kind of thing?
Yeah, here is our architecture right here. This is kind of like our high level, and I'm going to share this in our chat so that you all can check it out too if you want to. But this is kind of how it works. So your application directly via the SDK, and like I said, it's really just like a couple of lines of code unless you want to get more detailed with it. And then it goes directly to whichever kind of piece that you're trying to target immediately. So here's an example of like how an event gets saved when some kind of event like a crash happens. Stop, Molly. Goodness gracious. So your application sends the crash, and then basically it relays it, we ingest it, and then we kind of go through and save it and add it to all of the event stream and everything. And then you're able to kind of see where that error was not resonating, originating, originating from. Yeah. And we also have integrations with other pieces as well. So, mentioning going into that developer workflow. So you can see here on the side, we've got integrations with Vercel, Slack, PagerDuty, Teams, Jira Server, Jira, GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, Azure DevOps, etc. So if instead of kind of going into Sentry, again, you wanted to open up a Jira ticket the second that kind of, errors were happening, we can do that piece. If again, there's things like code owners and things like that for GitHub. I'm partial to GitHub just because I used to work there. But we can attach, like open up issues. We can open up pull requests. We can attach code owners and kind of directly go into where that was coming from. So it's because we're open source and because you can kind of use Sentry however it works best for you and for whatever type of application that you might have. Because again, whether you're building something on the back end, front end, mobile, a game, etc., you're going to have different needs for monitoring. You can really set up Sentry however it makes sense for your workflow. The very basics, again, like 5 lines of code, you can use the Sentry hosted version and kind of get started, and we will automatically start tracking that, events and errors and things like that. But if you want to make it really work exactly for your workflow, it's fairly easy, just depending on what kind of integrations you want to use, what kind of development workflows that you want to attach to it, and which language or framework you're working in.
Okay. So if I was supposed to, let's say we started with like the self-hosted version, right? I'm running it by myself. This is great. And then now my business starts to scale, right? And things are growing, business is good. And then now I want to move over to that hosted version. Tell me, one, how is it for me to like migrate from one place to the other? And then I'm guessing in addition to storage, like what are some of the other benefits do I get from being in that hosted space?
Yeah, great question. And actually, I'm wondering if I have a good. I'm hoping I have a good doc for this. Yeah. So I think this is a good one for it. Maybe not. Hang on. Sentry hosted versus. There we go. Self-hosted versus cloud. Here we go. This is what I was hoping for. This is exactly. So you can share that as well. Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of I think this question is a little bit more about how much effort you want to put into self-hosting. One potential issue with self-hosting is just all of the potential hidden costs and kind of like all of those integrations that we have with everything to make it work exactly for your developer workflow. It could be more useful to have it be something that we host for you. The self-hosting piece really is if you want to just be able to do that error and performance and all of that monitoring on your own. We do a lot of other analytics, and we have other types of features that we are in the process of releasing that might be useful for you if you wanted to use our hosted version, because then we're kind of like doing that constant pull-in of your data, constant pull-in of what's going on, and applying more analytics to what's happening. So I don't have like an exact. I was hoping I had more of like a pro and con list. Well, I mean, I guess this one might be useful. This also is the how to go from your self-hosted to our hosted version, which it is actually super easy. You'll just contact us and we'll help you do all of that. There's docs here for it that kind of walk you through how that works. There's just plans, you export your data, and then you send us the data. That's it. It should be really, really straightforward. And then we have people who can help you get started with that. But I was hoping that there was another. I mean, like the biggest benefit I would say is this kind of thing right here, right? Like the save on engineering and infrastructure costs. rather than having your engineers focused on that. You can have your engineers focused on keeping the application healthy, responding to issues when they happen, and leaving kind of all of that infra stuff to us to deal with. So trying to see if there was anything else, but yeah, you can check out some of that. I think Nextdoor might have been one that did do the move over, but we also have some of these types of things. I encourage you, like, click through some of our links, but we have these types of customer stories, and again, we focus really on kind of the engineering side of, like, why did somebody like Nextdoor want to use Sentry? Why do they want to use like a hosted version? What types of features within Sentry were the most useful for them? So in particular, Nextdoor was using code owners within GitHub. And so that allowed them to like leverage code owners even more by having their errors and performance issues kind of linked to it.
Oh, that's awesome. So in the monitoring space, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot about, and I've been kind of playing around with a little bit, is like open telemetry, right? Like I hear folks talk about not only just like being able to monitor errors, but I'm getting metrics and traces and like all these other things, right? And I know it's been like a little bit of a rocky path, right? Like the specs are changing and folks are trying to implement like the current version, but I think they're at 1.0 as of last year. I believe. Don't quote me, fact check me, but I believe they're at 1.0 as of this time. So I guess my question is, what's the relationship with Sentry and open telemetry? Like, is that support coming? Is it something y'all are thinking about? Is it in your SDKs? Is there a beta? Like how does, like, what's that world look like today?
Definitely. So, we are definitely also thinking about open telemetry. I think everyone should be, whether, however you feel about it, we should be aware of it and kind of thinking about it. We do have open telemetry support in beta currently for our Node.js, Python, Ruby, and Java SDKs. However, next month, we will be doing our GA, our general availability. We will be releasing open telemetry support next month, like later in February. So you can get you can check it out in terms of like what we're supporting, and start looking into configuring your open telemetry SDK to actually send these traces and spans to Sentry. Traces, like your stack traces and stuff, and then spans kind of what was happening around an error. But you can see also just like how to get started. And again, all of our docs are fairly similar and fairly straightforward. It's like, you install our open telemetry support, and then you add in some lines of code. Like, these are the open telemetry stuff. So this isn't all just Sentry stuff. We've got our Sentry support for Node right here. And then you just do an initialization of that before initializing your open telemetry stuff. And we basically handle the rest. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. So yeah, things like open telemetry is something that we are thinking about and we do want to offer support for. Another one that is really exciting, particularly in the application monitoring space, is profiling. So this is like having a better understanding of performance around a particular type of environment, so that maybe you can identify when people are using kind of like an older version of Android, they tend to have a lot of these types of issues, and then you can kind of decide if you want to put more engineering support around that or something else. So this is another type of feature. We have a lot of, I mentioned session replay as another one. You can see all of the different kind of products over here on the side of any of our docs pages, but session replay, profiling, open telemetry, these are things that whether you are in application monitoring space, or you're thinking about application monitoring, or you're just a developer and you're trying to make sure that your applications stay up to date and that you are putting the engineering effort where it should be, we try to support you through that.
Actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because I want to dig in more into this session replay thing. That's been such an interesting topic, because I feel like I've been talking about it like my entire career. right?
Yeah.
From the beginning of time, that's how old I am. From the beginning of time, I feel like folks have been wanting, or at least developers have been wanting, to be able to like see exactly what their user did. Like, I want to
Yep.
know what button you clicked on, and how long did you pause, and like what the screen looked like. And
Right.
I remember, again, way back whenever, we had like these test tools that would like take screenshots of your actual UI, right, and do image matching for like A/B testing and all these types of things. Again, just so that we could actually see what the user would be doing, what is the user seeing when they're doing the thing, and then doing it across different browsers too. So that's a matrix of issues, right? That always got needed to get automated. So I'd love to know a little bit about like how Sentry is actually doing that replay, because that for me is just such an interesting topic.
Definitely. So I'm going to send another link in the chat for you to share with everyone. This is actually our session replay demo that we did at our conference. So I would encourage folks, this is like a 10, 12-minute demo, to actually check it out here. But Ryan goes through what the actual session replay would look like. And one thing that is interesting, and it's a Pokemon app, which just makes it even more fun. But you can see in here kind of, we've got that video replay. It's like, play by play, essentially, video replay of what's going on. We've got those breadcrumbs still right below it. We have these various kind of events, I would call them, that you can see up here. And so on this like little timeline here, you can see like a red dot would be an error, a purple dot would just be kind of like a user input, a user click, etc. And so you can start to really just narrow down exactly where you want to focus your attention if there was kind of this error that was happening. And then you've got your console over here. Again, you have like all of the traditional things that that Sentry is going to offer for you to jump into the code and see what errors are happening. I was trying to see if there was one where he kind of jumped into it. But I'd encourage you to check that out. One thing in particular that we care a lot about at Sentry is privacy. And so we've done a lot of work. And one of the reasons that we're not just kind of like, trying to pull this back up. One of the reasons that we're not just like immediately releasing, like even though we do have it in beta and we do have a lot of customers who are currently using it, we're trying to be very mindful about how we release this particular feature because of things like user input and privacy. And we want to make sure that anything that we are capturing in the recording is not something that you as the application owner don't want saved or recorded from your users. Your users' privacy, while your users are not our users, they are, right? Through kind of like this transitive property or whatever. We care about their privacy as much as you do. And so I'm super excited to continue to see kind of how our session replay release happens. And I encourage you to check out this sneak peek that Ryan did at our conference.
Yeah, I really want to take a look at that video, particularly when it comes to like replaying authenticated sessions. Kind of curious to see like how it handles that. Because again, I could totally understand how that could be a very security sensitive topic,
Definitely.
right? And so, we all just have to be able to handle that in like a very responsible way.
Exactly. And, a lot of, so we do have a couple of like AMAs or Ask Me Anything sessions coming out for various features that we have. So for example, tomorrow, actually, we have an AMA, I think it's right here. Let me just grab it real quick. We have an AMA on, where's my live streams? Come on, here we go, channel. I should have had this one ready. Why I don't have this one ready is funny to me. Tomorrow at
Was it going to be on
10 a.m.
YouTube channel?
Yep, at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we have our session replay AMA. So if you are super interested in session replay, we have our open beta and we have our product manager and the engineers actually building session replay who are going to do an overview, a demo, and then answer any questions that you have about it. We have a couple of these different AMAs that are going to be coming out over the next couple of months. For example, next month, we also have one on Jetpack Compose. which if you're in the mobile space, if you're in the Android space, you might be familiar with. So we have like a Jetpack Compose best practices and then how to use Sentry with your Jetpack Compose code. AMA starting next month as well. So, I encourage you to either, subscribe to the Sentry YouTube channel, follow us on social media, all of the normal things to kind of get up to date on those things.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to make sure I sign up because I have tons of questions.
Yes.
Tons of questions.
Yes.
So
and if you register on this bit.ly link, you can send your questions in ahead of time and we will prioritize those questions. And again, the goal for this registration is to have a better understanding of who is interested in attending these types of sessions so that we can actually gear the content towards you and not just kind of random profile of people.
Okay, that makes sense. So I feel like you've given us a really good overview about what Sentry is and some of the things that they can do now. Do you have anything that's coming out soon that you're super excited about and you're like, okay, well, when this feature comes out, y'all are gonna be mind blown?
Yes. I mean, honestly, there's just so many little things that and I kind of mentioned a lot of them. I think session replay, I'm just super excited about that one. I think that one is just going to be super exciting. I think our profiling support is going to be really interesting as well. I think the idea of actually understanding what your users are doing and what they're experiencing instead of trying to, again, like we were talking about at the beginning of the stream, predict what situations users might get into. It's just impossible to do that. And yes, I think in general, developers have developed skills to do that, but to have this information where you can really just dig down and it's not just what they're experiencing, it is actually attached to the code that you wrote. I don't know. I'm super excited about that. The CodeCov acquisition, I think, is super exciting too, because again, the reason I joined Sentry, open source, we're just over 300 people in the company now. We're growing, which by the way, we are growing. We continue to hire. So if anybody wants to interview, feel free and check out all of our open positions that we have. But not only the size and kind of the developer first mentality, but also this idea that we want to actually be integrated into what developers actually do on a day-to-day basis. And acquiring CodeCov, I think, is a perfect example of that, because we don't want to just think about what happens after you've released, right? We want to think about what happens before the release too, and how can we tie the activities from before the release to what's happening, during release. Our integrations, I gave a talk at Jamstack last year on our integration with Netlify, for example. So a release just happened. Let's immediately roll back if there was some kind of huge performance regression, et cetera, right? What is happening before, during, and after a release, and how can we optimize engineers' time so that you can get to fixing those issues faster, as well as focus the majority of your time building new things instead of worrying about all of the problems that might be happening. So I don't know. Generally speaking, I'm just particularly excited about kind of all of the above, if you will, like this idea of open telemetry, this idea of profiling, session replay, integrating more into kind of that entire workflow with CodeCov, all of our integrations. I don't know, maybe I'm too excited about two things.
But you know what? I'm glad you came in here to share your excitement, because again, prior to this conversation, my thought was Sentry was a place that I could, instead of logging to a file, I'll log it to this other place instead. But obviously, there's so many more rich features that are inside of it. I know for me in particular, I'm really interested about that CodeCov stuff too. And I think we might have to have you or one of your folks come back on and talk about CodeCov in a future.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. I feel that's super deep, and we can really get into it.
It is so fascinating. Yeah, we've got this incredible advocate on our team, Tom, who is focused on CodeCov, and he knows all the things about CodeCov. So yeah, I'm sure he would love to come back on. Actually, Lazar just mentioned another cool feature, which is our distributed tracing feature. And he's actually building a bunch of content around distributed tracing for a Next.js app. But yeah, you actually can connect your entire like stack and infrastructure into one picture of what happened. So it's not just like, oh, there was a bug when they clicked on this button, right? Like it's like, oh, they clicked on this button and then it went into this, you know, SDK call, and then it went into this database, and you actually track the entire trace of that issue. So we have some really interesting content coming up around that. And like this was just kind of like a scratch the surface overview. I did want to mention a couple of things. Lazar, who's in the chat, is going to be speaking at Android Worldwide, which is happening on January 31st. So if anybody wants to check out a little bit more about our Android/mobile support, feel free to you know, register for Android Worldwide and check out his talk.
Is that a virtual one, or like Android
Yes.
Worldwide? Is that virtual? So can we just sign up and register and check it out?
Yep.
Okay.
And then Shana, who couldn't be here today, but will be there for Developer Week, which is also a Bay Area and virtual conference. So again, you can register. And she's going to be talking about the performance impact of generated JavaScript, which is a fascinating topic. And actually, I believe I have another, maybe I don't. Okay. Never mind. Okay, I thought I had another video on that, but it's fine. But she's going to be giving a talk about that. So essentially, like the JavaScript that you write is usually down compiled so that your JavaScript is compatible with older browsers or environments or things like that. And then if you're using TypeScript, like our SDKs do, then you often or probably will have to transpile your TypeScript to JavaScript. And so being able to understand how your code is being transpiled and down compiled is super important, because your bundle size is really affected by that generated JavaScript. And we actually, when we released our version 7 of our JavaScript SDK for Sentry, we were able to reduce the bundle size by 29% by just having a better understanding of how this transpilation, I don't know how to say that word, and down compilation, happens. So that's going to be a super interesting talk. And then lastly, Armin Ronisher, who actually is the creator of Flask, and works at Sentry, is going to be giving a talk at FOSDEM
hold on. I feel like you just dropped like amazing little tidbit. Like you have the creator of Flask working at Sentry. You just like glossed over like, oh, this is not a big deal. Just like this little person that hasn't done anything in
you know, it's just Armin. No, he's absolutely incredible. Yeah, like yes, he is one of our engineers here at Sentry. Also created Flask, and you know, obviously he also very much cares about open source, and so he's going to be giving a talk at FOSDEM, which I don't think this one is virtual. I can't remember now, but I encourage you to check that out as well. So those are just kind of like a few of our places. Again, I mentioned a couple of our AMAs that are coming out, so you can check those out on our live stream. And yeah, I mean, if you want to keep up to date, we also do share all of these things that are coming out on our Discord. So you're welcome to join our Discord, and sometimes we do AMAs inside of our Discord, and our engineers are pretty active there, so you can also ask questions there if you didn't get your question answered during like the session replay AMA, for example. Yeah, we're generally just like excited to learn about the needs of developers and try to help you optimize whatever workflow you have. So attend our talks, attend our live streams, join our Discord, chat with us.
You guys have so much going on. Like I don't even think I can keep up. There's like a lot happening right now.
There is. We wanted to hit the new year kind of running. We're super excited about just kind of jumping into communities and really understanding kind of the needs of communities. And I say that because, like, for example, you know, I mentioned we're very much focused on developers, developer first, et cetera, and we think about that in terms of our features and kind of our support, and we've got all of these SDKs for various languages and frameworks. And, you know, an example is that we released support for catching N+1 errors in Django applications. And the Django project even found an N+1 issue using Sentry, which was really, really cool. And so, I don't like, there's kind of the developer persona, and I'm super interested to know, like, in general, what do developers need and what do they care about, and how can we better support them. But maybe even more so, I'm super interested to know, like, specifically, you are a Django developer. What do you need? You're a PHP Laravel developer. Like, what issues are you running into? What challenges do you have, and how can we better support you through, whether it's the application monitoring or the code coverage, or just having an integration with some other type of tool that you use so that you can find those errors or performance issues faster. Yeah. So in general, we're just kind of like excited to learn how we can better make your lives easier.
I mean, just as you're talking, like, I have ideas about like some tool integrations I would like to see, but we're gonna save that for off camera. We can talk about that later.
Perfect.
I think some stuff that would be really cool. But Sarah, I think that's about it, man. I don't think we have any more questions from folks. Definitely, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you spending the time to talk to us about Sentry and like this session replay feature, upcoming open telemetry feature, the alerting, the profiling, the everything, right? Like, it's been absolutely amazing. And so if folks want to reach out to you specifically, I'm guessing they could reach out to you on all the things, right? Like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
YouTube,
I'm Dr.
Twitter,
Guffels on everything. So you can just kind of,
Mastodon,
yeah.
all the things.
Yep. You just search Dr. Guffels, and if I'm on that platform, I will pop up. I've made my username the same everywhere.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, and then thank all of you for watching. If you're not watching us live, like we said, like, always make sure that you check out the description. We might have some links and tons of resources that you can take a look at. And also, too, if this is your first time watching Stripe Dev Chats, we do this every Wednesday. So if you're interested to see what's happening in the world of Stripe and how you can enhance some of the applications that you're building with Stripe with some of our friends and partners like folks here at Sentry, make sure you check us out every Wednesday, where we'll feature some new cool stuff that you could think about using. But with that being said, thank you all so much, and I guess we'll see you all next time. All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.